Right, I don't want to go live just yet.
Well, all you've got to do is push that button.
Okie dokie.
And then Alt-Tab to your presentation.
Okay.
And you push the Go Live button.
Is there anywhere I can put this just a little higher? Hang on.
I don't know.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
No.
Actually, I'll put it on my lap. It'll be alright.
Could you shoot that? Is that better?
Hopefully.
Keep wires from underneath. So you should be pretty much good to go. Streaming levels are still bad. That's just Facebook's page being trash. All you've got to do is click Go Live and then just double check it on your phone. It's fucking janky ass shit. It's that. This is why I was preferring to keep it on the bed.
Okay, put it on the
No, no, it's too late. It's fine. You don't want to source it through the camera. Every fucking time. At the end, whenever it cancels or needs refreshing, it fucking breaks and does that. There you go. Right, you ready?
Yeah, would you mind just grabbing my drink for me, which is on the table?
I'll get that for you. You just click Go Live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You clicked it.
No, not yet. I'm just going to give it a minute, make sure it's actually... Are we on? Are we on? Let's
Yeah.
have a look.
Yeah, it's fine.
We're on! Fantastic. So it seems to be working all okay. Right. Just bear with us a moment, folks. I'm just making sure that I can see this on my phone, as I've never done a stream like this before. So I'm just trying to refresh my phone as frantically as possible to get this all sorted. Here we go, we're on. Fantastic. Right, so hopefully, I'm just going to mute this because we don't want to hear my voice twice, do we? Lovely. So I have got you all ready to fly on my phone as well. So welcome to the scariest thing that I've ever done. So this is my Spanish lessons to you guys. It's Spanish Saturday, so bienvenido, lección 1 or lección 1, really. But yes, so I would like to welcome you today to your first little Spanish class with me. So it's going to be a bit strange because I generally, when I have sort of kind of taught before, I've had people to respond to me, but obviously I can't hear you practicing at home, so we will wing it and see how far we go. So today we are going to learn Spanish, or more specifically Castilian Spanish. Spanish is the 4th most spoken language in the world. It's spoken not just in Spain, but you've also got parts of the world like Mexico, Venezuela, Peru, Argentina. It's a very, very well spoken language, and one of the words that we use for Spanish speakers is hispanohablantes. It's one of my favourite words to use actually, because it just kind of, I don't know, it rolls beautifully. So, lesson 1. Well, it's not going to be a majorly exciting thing today, guys, because at the end of the day, I've got to show you how to pronounce these letters and sounds and words before I can really teach you how to say all these different swear words that people have been asking me to do. But as this is hopefully child friendly, we're not going to be having too much of that here, because at the end of the day I want kids to be able to watch this as well. So for the naughtier side of Spanish, I would rather keep that past 11 o'clock at night, really, past watershed. Anyway, so bienvenido. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Spanish Saturdays lesson 1. So let's see how this goes. I have not got a script, I am just going to wing this through. So, yes. So when you start a new language, you need to go back to the very basics. So this is obviously from the website 411.net, Spanish411.net, so Alfabeto Español. And it looks quite familiar to most of us. Everyone that knows the Roman alphabet or the Latin alphabet will recognise most of the letters that we are seeing here. But in Spanish, they're going to be said very differently. So we're going to go through those together first. So yes, like I say, this is back to basics, back to square one, because at the end of the day, you need to build your foundation for your language before you can kind of learn it, so to speak. And I want to be able to tell you how to pronounce things correctly, so that when you do go and speak to Spanish speakers, wherever you go on your travels and you want to show off some Spanish, you'll be able to say it properly without kind of, well, I'll get to that in the moment, and how to pronounce certain words and some bugbears of me as well. So it's simple. So A for A. So I'm just going to say it in Spanish rather than go A, B, B. So we're just going to go. So A, bit like father. A. B, like the English B, B, B. But with letters like B, you don't want to have too much of a explosion on your lips. So where, especially if you're British, a lot of people will pronounce their P's and their T's with a t sort of sound. In Spanish, we want to soften that a little bit, because at the end of the day, they don't speak like that. They don't speak with B and T. It's more B. So it's a lot softer on the, as it comes out of your mouth. So the next letter, depending on how you want to pronounce it, this one's a bit of a choice for everybody. You've got se, or as I would pronounce it with a lisp, the. Next you have de, which is quite self-explanatory really. E, efe, very similar to our English F as well. The next one does get a few people confused. So the next one is a little bit like a Spanish J, if you know about that. So you've got je, je. Now depending on what letters follow the G, I will get to that shortly as well, is depending on how you pronounce those words. So it does say just underneath there, before A, O or U, it would be like a G sound. But if it's before an E or an I, it is like a H sound. Then we've got H. Now, a little bit similar, the H, like in French and some other Latin-based languages, the H is silent. So in English, we would probably say something like hache. We're not going to do that in Spanish. We don't do that. So we would say ache, ache. So it's almost as if that H doesn't exist. It's purely for written forms of Spanish. E, E. And then the next one is the letter J. Now this one does get quite a lot of people, because not everybody knows that a J in Spanish is pronounced H, jota, jota. Although, fun fact, if you speak Portuguese, you actually do pronounce it jota. But today we're going to be doing Jota. Jota, because we are learning Spanish. Now, the letter K, you do occasionally see it in the Spanish language, but it's not really a letter that is like original. K is more something that's kind of been added in later as languages have evolved, but that's K, K. And then we have L, L. So this is one L, and I will get to something about that later. So if you look down just at the bottom right of the screen, you've got a double L sound there. So I will get to that a bit later, a bit more detail, but when you see a double L, it's a A. So it sounds completely bizarre and alien, but you get used to it. So L, like the English L, and if you see a double L, it's A. Next we have M, M, N, N, and then we have the one that I really love the most, Enye, Enye. So you've got that y sound cropping up again, like with the double L really, but you've got an Enye, Enye. Next we have O, O, quite explanatory really, and of course B. Notice that I'm not exploding with my P. See, in my English, when I say my name, which is Penny, I would say penny, penny. Well, a bit exaggerated there, penny. Whereas if I was a Spanish native, I would say bene, bene. So it's a lot less p. It's a little bit softer on that way out. So it's be, be. So you're kind of almost forming the letter, but then you're just softening it as the air comes out of your lips, just to give that more of a softer edge. So just remember that when you are speaking Spanish and you're using a lot of the harder sounds that we would use in English, like P's, T's, B's, D's. To be honest, there's too many to really go through them all now. But so a pe would be a be. Now, one other trick, actually, if you're not sure if you're pronouncing your pe correctly, if you hold up a piece of paper in front of your lips, so about here, I haven't got one handy, so this would be an excellent thing to show you. But if you hold up a piece of paper in front of your lips, just gently in front of you, you don't want that piece of paper to move. You want that piece of paper just to kind of sit there. So the air coming out of your lips is not going to make that paper move. Whereas in English, that would be something you'd probably see. So moving swiftly on to the next letter. Q. Q. So Q is pronounced very much like K, like a K sound, like a K. Q. Q. And then we'll move on to we've got 2 more rows to go. So next is R. R. So it's like a soft English R. So you R. R. You're not sort of R, R, but R. R. And next we have S. That sounds quite similar to English, doesn't it? S. Obviously, don't do it quite as exaggerated as my last attempt at that. So S. S. Beautifully. Next we have D. So as I was saying with the B, the D, the P, there's too many of these explosive letters that we use in English. We want to throw that away. We want to soften those letters. So in Spanish, we're not going to be going te. We're going to be de, de, just like that. So if you imagine later on when you're asking someone in your house to make you a cup of tea, because you know we're all in lockdown at the moment, so you know tea is quite a plenty in the UK. We love our tea. Yes, we definitely do meet that stereotype. So if you hold a piece of paper up when you're asking your partner for tea, you want to pronounce that letter by going de. So you can go de, please, if you really want to, although they might not understand what you're saying if they've not taken this class. So, yes. So, next we're going to ooh. Ooh. So it's a little bit like oh, but more of, well, ooh. So when we say ooh in English, it's a little bit like that. We won't say things like you, like we do in English when we use this letter in Spanish. It's ooh, ooh. Next we have, now this one will probably mess your head about a little bit at first as well, because you know it is another language, so it's not going to have the same rules as Spanish, as English, sorry. Excuse me. So the next letter we have is B. B. Now that sounds a bit similar to B, and I've just realised I was about to point to my screen, and you can't really see what I'm pointing at here, so I don't think you can even see my mouse. No, you can't. So that it sounds very similar to the letter B. 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 So you've got B and B. So you've got B and B. Yes, there's basically no difference in the pronunciation. In some Spanish-speaking countries there will be more pronunciation than others, but V's are very, very soft. So we won't be saying sort of V, we'll be saying V. So it's almost identical, and to be honest, most of the time it sounds exactly the same, and I will get to a bit later about that. But that is, we do need to remember to include the letter V in the Spanish language because it is there, it does exist, and sometimes words sound the same, but we need those letters there to distinguish between the two, and I'll get to that in the next few slides hopefully. And then we've also got W, which very literally double V, W. Next we have X, and then we have Y. Now in Latin based languages, the letter Y has actually been taken from the Greek letter for E, or E as in I. So the Y is actually a letter that we've borrowed from the Greeks to use in Spanish. Excuse me a moment, guys. So coming next, finally, well, almost finally, we have Zeta. Or, as I personally prefer to pronounce it, Theta. So I do personally speak my Spanish with a lisp. Not everybody does, but I will explain a little bit more in a bit more detail soon. Now, you're going to see lots of different letters being arranged in different ways. So we've also got other sounds that we're going to need to be aware of when we're learning Spanish. So another one is a ch, very much like we have in the English language. It does exist, and it is pronounced like a j. And then obviously, as I mentioned briefly earlier, we've got the eye sound. And this one, I've been speaking Spanish for 15 years and I still mess this one up because my tongue finds it difficult, but it's R. So it's very different. Weirdly enough, it's different from R. And what you're doing is you're rolling your tongue as you say R. It's takes some practice, and some words are a bit easier than others, but sometimes the pronunciation is the big major key that you need. And yeah, if you've not pronounced it quite right, you're changing the whole meaning and context of the word, so it can get a little bit. So, next, well, I have to put this in there, and it's kind of wrong of me if I don't put this in there. Vowels, they're majorly important. They're the main sound that we have in most of our Latin-based languages. So, a, e, I, o, u. Fortunately, in the Spanish language, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a, I, o, u. You haven't got all this messing around by going a, e, I, o, u, all the different pronunciations like you would see in French, where you have one accent going this way, one accent going that way, and then they all sound differently. Well, Spanish speakers don't mess around. They just keep it quite simple with the vowel sounds. A, I, o, u. I must say that's a little bit of a relief, really, because French is hard. So, you've probably heard as I'm speaking through the alphabet with you today that I personally prefer to use the Lisp sound in Spanish, but this does vary on a person to person. If you're not a native Spanish speaker, this is not really something you're going to worry about, because you either speak with a Lisp or you don't speak with a Lisp. Now, it's not technically proven. There is a theory or a myth that the Lisp comes from a Spanish king who had a terrible Lisp and couldn't pronounce a lot of the s sounding words or letters in the Spanish language, and to kind of make him feel more comfortable with himself, everybody else kind of borrowed that from him, which it's not been completely proven, so whether that is 100% true or not, I don't know. My teacher was from Chile. She actually taught me this as well, and I've since looked it up, and there's no sort of research to say whether it is or not. There was a king with a Lisp, but whether that's the reason why some people speak with a Lisp and some people don't, we're not quite sure. So what you'll probably find across the world is in mainland Spain, where naturally Spanish comes from, for the majority of the country, they will speak with the Lisp. So, for example, when you get a word like gracias, which makes me feel uncomfortable because I've been lisping for so long. So, in Spain, when they will tend to lisp, so they will have sort of a th sound. So, you're basically touching your teeth with your tongue, a th sort of sound there. However, other parts of the world, especially places like Latin America, so again we're looking at Mexico, the United States, Chile, Peru, Colombia, the majority of people there will speak like a s sound, which, to be honest, if you're not a native speaker of Spanish, when you see gracias, you're going to literally pronounce it like gracias, because that's how in English we would pronounce our CI sounds together. It's always a s sound rather than a k sound. But when I went to Spain for that time, they kept correcting me and getting quite annoyed with me because I kept saying gracias, and then I kept saying I said zapatos, and they didn't like that, so I've written the word for shoes there, but that's another classic one where to lisp or not to lisp, so to speak. So there isn't a correct way to pronounce these. It's more down to a personal choice. All I would say is, when you've made that choice, don't revert back. So I've now sort of gone forwards with that lisp. It's not a case of you can choose some words to lisp, some words to not. You've got to be consistent, so it's either one or the other, basically. Otherwise, it's going to get a bit confusing, and it's going to get a bit confusing for you as well, so it just makes it easier if you kind of just assume one or the other. A lot of people will tend to go for the s sound. I only went for the th because I got told off. So that was when I was at school in Spain. So what you'll see here is some letters, or well, more like sounds that you'll come across in the Spanish language. So I've kind of isolated them on their own at the moment for you. So when you come across a normal S, you would literally pronounce it like an S. However, when you come across za, ze, zi, zo, zu, or tha, the, thi, tho, thu, although you don't tend to hear the latter two so much, but the, the, thi, tho, thu, when you see something like that, that is when you either need to lisp or not lisp. So you either pronounce it like an S or you pronounce it with a lisp, like I just demonstrated there. And two more that you will come across is thi and the, or si and se. Some people do find it much easier just to go with the S's. I personally go with a lisp because it helps me distinguish words better, and of course, yeah, I got told off. But again, it doesn't matter. All I would say is just pick one over the other, because that way it will help you in how to sort of learn going forward. So I've written a bit more here as well, just to kind of give you a little bit more on like the rules. So whether you're practicing the lisp or not, these are the ones that you would lisp for if you want to lisp. If you don't want to lisp, don't. There's no big deal over that. I mean, it's mainly how Spaniards would speak over Latino Americans, but it, you know, again, it is important that you have some consistency in which method you want to go via. So, but when you do see the letter S or esse, you literally just want to keep that as is, so no problem. Like I say, most people just keep the S sound for the C's and the Z's because it's just easier. But yeah, I make life complicated. So, but there is a couple of things I just need to make you aware of so it doesn't get too confusing. And of course I will make these materials available later for you guys. So when you come across a C with an A, so you'd have a K sound. So you're kind of going back to that K sound. So it'd be K. And then of course you've got the, ko, ku. But then you don't really get ku. That's more of a kwa sound. But I will come to words that have that kwa sound later on, because that's where it gets interesting. This is where a lot of people kind of make mistakes, especially if they know a bit of Italian as well. I made so many mistakes when I studied Italian because my Spanish was kind of pouring into it a little bit. So once you've chosen, you've got to stick to your lisp or don't stick to your lisp. So you kind of just choose whether you want to go with an S or a th sound. But just remember, S's are S's, which is really confusing, I know. But hopefully this will get much, much easier as time goes on and time, you know, you get used to kind of reading and speaking. So you might remember when we went through the alphabet a little while ago that V's and B's are pretty much the same. But when we are speaking Spanish, and especially when we are learning Spanish for the first time, this can get super confusing. So naturally, when you've got a B and a B and they sound exactly the same, which is what essentially a homophone is, it can be really difficult to understand. If you're listening to someone speaking Spanish at you, you're thinking, oh, did they say basta or basta? Oh, was it that one or that one? And as you can see, I've listed some of these words that basically sound identical. So you've got bello and bello. So they sound exactly the same. Vienes, vienes. Sounds the same, but they mean totally different things. So naturally that does depend on the context that you are, of what you're talking about. It can, you know, but for the sake of written words, this does actually help you a little bit more to understand that sometimes it's not quite that easy. And of course you've got vaca and bucca. You've got luggage rack and a cow, which really you couldn't get further away from what's different. Acerbo, acerbo. Bitter and heritage. Right, okay, what? You see the differences there. So it's going to be a little bit hard, but just if you kind of keep that sort of thing in mind, that I don't know, if you're frantically looking for your dictionary and you think it's a B sound, it might actually be the V sound, but because they're homophones, they sound exactly the same. It's sometimes a little bit, so it's always something I always like to kind of remind people about, that there is a very distinct sort of similarity in the way they sound, but then obviously on paper, written down, it's different. And that gives you that way of identifying it. But of course, when we're out in the world, not everybody comes with subtitles. Actually, in fact, nobody does, unless they're on the TV. So when you are actually speaking to Spanish speakers, you're not going to have someone's subtitles. You're not going to be able to necessarily distinguish what they're saying, especially if you're not very fluent in the language. So this is the other one. And this is one of these things that also kind of grinds my gears a little bit. But I can't help it. I'm a linguist, and it's one of those things that I like things pronounced right. And naturally, I get it wrong too. I'm human. So, but there is an ene and an enye. There's two N's basically in the Spanish language, and they're pronounced a little different. So my favourite way to remember is remembering that the enye, so that's the N with the little squiggly line on the top, which for some reason is cut out on my slide, so I apologise for that. But that's always got a y sound. So Español, which is the language that we are learning right now, ladies and gents and gentlefolk. Español, just remember that the enye, the little squiggle, just imagine that you've got the N and a y, a Y sound afterwards. So Español, and that will help you remember to pronounce it Español rather than Espanol, which sounds awful, which you probably understand. Espanol. Yeah, it's one of my pet hates about when people can't pronounce certain things. And yeah, we have the L thing as well, because this is one that really caught me out the first time I learned Spanish. Oh gosh, like 2005 I think it was. So you've got the L and the eye, and that's completely different. And you know, naturally that a double L would just have an L sound anyway in English. But in the Spanish language, it does not. It does not at all, ladies and gentlemen. So it would be pronounced more like a y sound. So for example, ya, ye, yi, yo, you. And L, la, le, li, lo, lu. But it does get easier. So as long as you kind of remember that the double L is a y and the single L is a l, you'll be alright. Oh, and this is my biggest pet hate about Spanish pronunciation. So it would be wrong if I didn't actually put this one in, so it should be coming up. I hope I haven't got too much of a delay here. So the next slide that's coming up hopefully now for you guys. Yeah, so this one is quite a hard word when you first come across it anyway. So, but the Spanish J or jota is pronounced with a h sound. So like jalapeños. So I'm giving you a little bit of a challenge there. Jalapeños is jalapeños, not jalapenos or jalapenos as everybody pronounces them. It really gets on my nerves. Oh, I'm really silly. And then obviously the other one that I always like to kind of touch on as well is fajita. Everyone likes fajitas. I don't think anybody I know who doesn't like fajitas. So fajita, so fajita, not fajita. So the J is always that h sound, and big, you've got to make sure you always the h. So it's almost like the French R, but h. So jalapeños. And I thought I'd pick a quite a tricky word there, because it's got the enye that we've literally just touched on as well. So that jalapeños, jalapeños. And once you've got it, it just rolls beautifully off the tongue. It's just like good word. Although I'm not a fan of them actually. But everyone says jalapenos and it annoys me, so I thought I'd bring it up. So we're moving over to the next bit because, like I say, the alphabet gets confusing, and it's always worth touching on this before we go any further in stuff that I can teach you. Because when you go back to basics, you are literally going back to basics because the whole pronunciation of these things changes dramatically. So another h sound that you will see is with a G sound as well. So if we go across the board with our different vowel sounds, we've got ga, go, and gu. Or if we're looking at the top row there, right up at the top in the red banner there, this is how it's supposed to be. Ga, he, hi, go, gu. So you'll notice what I've done there. The two he and hi have got that h sound. So it's like a he, hi. Very much like the Spanish J, the jota. So when you come across, let's say, the word angel or ángel, it would be literally ángel, not ángel, ángel. But this rule will only apply to the letter G when it is followed by an E or an I vowel. So for A, O, and U, you would still have that G sound. I appreciate if you need to go back and sort of watch this again afterwards because it's a lot to take in for lesson 1, but I thought, you know, we need to kind of get these foundations laid down first. Oh, it's the fun one again. The one that I can never quite get right on my tongue. So, R and R. So you can tell I've struggled with the R. And I've been speaking Spanish for like 15 years and I still struggle. Now, I've given you 2 examples as well. So what's happening in your mouth as you're saying these 2 different types of R sounds is your tongue is basically like rolling or tapping at the roof of your mouth. But the pronunciation is massively key right now. So you've got R and R. So if you pronounce it slightly wrong, it's going to mean a totally different thing. So for example, you've got pero, which is but, you know, you could say, I don't know, I like something but I don't like something else, so but. And then you've got perro, which is dog. So if you're saying I like something, dog something, you know, you think, oh my god, what the hell? So you can imagine how that can be a little bit. So the R, you've got an R and an R sound, and there's those distinctive differences there that are massively important because it can easily trip you up. It can easily trip you up. So it's a trill sound, so you've got that extra R sound as you're pronouncing a double R consonant. And that's really important to sort of take note of, especially with the language. I mean, pero is probably a word that you're going to see a lot as well because, you know, we always use the word but in English. You might even use the word dog a lot in English, but, you know, when you're speaking Spanish, you know, you don't really want to mess those 2 up too much, but there are more words. This is just obviously my favourite example. So you have R and R. See, it's pronounced like completely, yeah. But when you're practicing these later, you're going to get a little bit tongue-tied. So, yeah, I'd recommend going over this video a few times and just kind of getting that practice in, saying it with me, pero, perro, pero, perro, pero, perro. See? Okay. So you're probably getting to this point now, you're thinking, oh my god, Pen, is this over now? Because let's face it, the Spanish alphabet is a massive different, like, kettle of fish compared to the English alphabet. Although, in theory, English language is actually technically one of the hardest languages to learn. One of. Which is why a lot of people, when they come to England or America or wherever an English-speaking country is, they often struggle because we do pronounce words not how they're written, whereas the Spanish, once you've learnt those essential rules of the different letters and alphabets and different sounds, it's pretty easy in pronunciation. It just takes a little bit of practice. So I'm gonna kind of give you a bit of a rest on the alphabet. You can go back and watch that as much as you want now. So the next bit I thought, well, I'm going to finish with a few bits to sort of show you how you can introduce yourself and something that you can practice with whoever you've got at home with you, or if you FaceTime your friends or family later, you can show them this video and then you can practice, or practice in front of the mirror, do what you want. So as you can see, I've put the English on one side and the Spanish on the other. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I will go through those with you now. So you've got hello, hola. Now remember, with the H, you're not pronouncing the h sound because it's silent. It's more for written purposes. So you're saying hola. Sorry, I just waved into my other half. And goodbye, which is adios. Adios. Which most people probably have heard those ones before. Now, there are several ways to say hello, how are you? Like when you're introducing yourself to someone new as well, which, you know, you're going to do it. So we all probably have heard the one hola, ¿cómo estás? Or ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿cómo estás? And yeah, that's probably the one that most people in the world would have heard at least once. And there's another way that you can also introduce yourself as well, by hola, ¿qué tal? And you can introduce your friends this way as well. So it means essentially the same thing. So hola, ¿qué tal? Or hola, ¿cómo estás? Hello, how are you? And you can reply, to be honest, I'm going to go with good because I want to kind of get all the positivity, because we're all in lockdown, we're all in the same boat, and let's try and be positive rather than negative. But I'll tell you what the negative word is as well, but I didn't really want to bum you out in this slideshow today. So you to say, oh, good, and you? Bien, ¿y tú? Bien, ¿y tú? Good, you? I mean, you could say, mal, ¿y tú? But I mean, or you could say regular, which sounds very much like regular, but it literally means, yeah, I'm alright. I'm alright, regular. Doesn't sound quite normal for an English speaker to say, oh yeah, I'm regular. But in Spanish, they will go, oh, regular, regular, which means, yeah, I'm alright, I'm okay. So, we've got hola, adios, hola, ¿qué tal? Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bien, ¿y tú? So I'm going to move on to the next page now, because I'm going to teach you some more phrases, guys, don't worry. And I've askew with this slide slightly. I don't know if it's the same on your side, but hopefully you've got a better view than I have. So, you've introduced yourself to whoever you're speaking to, maybe your friend, maybe somebody new. But let's just pretend for now that this is someone new, you've never met them before, so you think, well, what do we normally say? Oh, pleased to meet you. Mucho gusto. And I love that phrase so much. I don't know why. It's so lovely. Mucho gusto. It's got like a lot of heart and passion in that phrase. Mind you, the Spanish language is very passionate, so it always has been quite like, good. So, pleased to meet you. Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto. So I'll say that a bit slower. I just realised I forget that I speak too quickly. Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto. And as previous, you know, when you're saying goodbye, adios, goodbye. Or we can spice it up a little bit and we can say hasta luego, or hasta luego, hasta luego, which means see you later, or until next time, Hasta la vista. Hasta la vista. So remember your vista. Hasta la vista. But it's a very soft B sound. Hasta la vista. And I can't help but my little reference there because, you know, I'm a nerd. So if we go back to what we've got here, so we've got mucho gusto, pleased to meet you. Mucho gusto. Adios. Bye. Hasta luego. Hasta luego. See you later. Hasta la vista. I really want to say it. Hasta la vista, baby. There we go. I feel better now. Hasta la vista. Until next time. And of course, really, I mean, you're introducing yourself to someone for the first time. You're not gonna be sort of just saying, "Oh, hi, yeah, cool, hello, nice to meet you. How are you? Good, great, bye, done." Well, most people introduce their name, right? Yeah? Cool. So, in Spanish, we would say, ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? We've got double L as well. Llamas. ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? Well, actually, just because I have to point this one out, it actually means, what do you call yourself? Rather than, my name is. But in a lot of Latin-based languages, they actually say it this way, I call myself something. So when we're saying, oh, okay, someone's asked me what my name is, ¿Cómo te llamas? So as I'm doing the demonstration today, I would say, me llamo Penny. Me llamo Penny. So with that double L sound again, me llamo Penny, which is my name. And obviously in your case you would say me llamo whatever your name is. So you're literally replying, I call myself Penny, rather than my name. I mean, you can say my name is, like mi nombre es, but it's not something that you would hear very often in the Spanish speaking world. You'd really hear me llamo, or como te llamas. Or occasionally you might say como se llama, or what do you call them, or como se llama, what do they call themselves. But we'll get to all the different tenses and grammar a few weeks from now, I reckon, because that stuff gets complicated. I'm not gonna lie. So we're only doing the very basics today, introducing ourselves and just kind of having a little bit of fun with it. And of course, the alphabet, because we need to build that foundation, guys, so that we can get our pronunciation as we learn. And you know, you can start reading texts and things and you'll be able to pronounce it perfectly. I'm not sure if you'll fully understand it just yet, but pronunciation is always good, because that way we know whatever we're trying to say, we're saying it correctly so that people can understand what we're saying. So yeah. So what I'm going to suggest, obviously this isn't homework, I'm not going to chase you for it. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, also fine. You're welcome to video chat with me later and we can always practice this together instead. This is just a little dialogue that you can practice at home, or you can even practice that you're both people. Pretend you're both people and do the conversation with yourself if you really want to, just to get that, just to get that practice in. So I'm going to run through it with you, but obviously it's going to sound like I'm talking to myself, but yeah. So just imagine there's two people speaking here. So if you read along with me here, you go, hola, ¿qué tal? Hello, how are you? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? Very well, thank you. And yourself? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Cómo te llamas? Very well, thank you. What is your name? Me llamo Penny. ¿Y tú? My name is Penny, and you? Oh gosh, what could my second name be? My second name, me llamo Jane. Mucho gusto. My name is Jane. Pleased to meet you. And then the last person would then naturally reply, Mucho gusto. Pleased to meet you. Pretty simple dialogue, but it's something to get you going because you've learnt the basics today of how to pronounce each of the individual letters, how they sound, because at the end of the day, they're quite different from what we're used to in the English language. So keep listening over the alphabet, practicing the different sounds and going over them, and then you've got this little dialogue that you can kind of practice. You've still got the alphabet at the beginning so you can refer back to, and I will be publishing this as well so that you can kind of look at the file, go back and forth and do it in your own time, because at the end of the day I'm not going to chase you guys. You don't have to do this at home if you don't want to. It is just there if you want to practice it at home. Great. So, preguntas or questions, which I appreciate if none of you are watching at the moment, which is absolutely fine because I know it's a Saturday, so I don't expect people to be at the moment. But if you do have any questions about anything that I've said, or you want me to go over anything again with you, or you want to practice, feel free to send me a message. I honestly don't mind, because at the end of the day, it's something for all of us to do. It's something for me to do. I love learning languages. It's one of my favourite hobbies. I'm not a teacher. I'm just in lockdown like everybody else and bored out of my mind. And you guys voted for a Spanish class, so I thought, why not? But if you do have any questions, just come and speak to me. I'm more than happy to do my best to help you with anything. I will be releasing the materials that I've been showing you today on the internet, so that you can access that and go through it in your own time. You can have my video playing in the background if you want to. Whatever you want to do, it's entirely up to you. But again, I am here if you need any help, if you want to study a bit more, if you want recommendations, you know where I'll be. So, as you can tell, this is the end of our video now, and yeah, I've got to admit, I did pretty much freestyle this whole thing with no lesson plan other than the slides to talk you through it. But to be honest, the alphabet isn't really something you need to script. it's all big, you know, it's the biggest thing that you've got to learn at the beginning, because you've got to lay that foundation out, because if you don't know how to pronounce the different sounds and letters, then you're not going to be able to use this lesson or class to the best of it can be. And there's no point me saying all these different words at you if you don't know how to repeat them back. So I will say gracias and hasta la próxima, which means see you next time. And obviously I've just put it on a background here of Spain. See, I learned Spanish from a Chilean teacher, but also from a teacher from Andalusia in Spain, and I also spent some time in Valencia. I've got friends from all over the Spanish speaking world. I've got friends that live in Spain but they're from Venezuela. I'm basically a little bit obsessed with Hispanic, Spanish Latin American culture. I love reggaeton music, I like Latin music and things like that, so, and they were sort of some of my biggest influences to learn Spanish 15 years ago when I did start. So yeah, and naturally I am a little rusty, I'm not perfect, but I'm here to share a little bit of my knowledge, and if you enjoy it, then that's fantastic, and it keeps me busy, it keeps you busy for a little while. You're basically getting to learn the basics of a language for free with somebody teaching you, albeit though I am a little bit nuts, that's also good. But, you know, who isn't really these days? If there's anything at all though you do need between now and my next class, which I hope to do another one in a week, but if I can get one ready in time, then possibly midweek. But it did take me quite a while to get this set up. But I do want to just do a little shout out to my boyfriend as well, because he did set up this to be able to be streamed on Facebook. I have no idea what he's done or how he's done it. So I do want to say a big thank you to him, because without him this wouldn't have happened quite the same as you're seeing today. So I am really, really grateful to Kurt for kind of helping me out with this and being my tech wizard. So, you know, do show your appreciation to him as well, because, you know, he's helped me set this whole thing up that I can do a proper lesson with a proper slideshow rather than holding an iPad and just chatting at you. Which was the original plan. So without him I wouldn't have had this lovely setup to present to you today. So yeah, but other than that, thanks very much if you've watched this with me today. And if, again, as I say, if you do have any questions between now and next time, just ping me an email or an inbox message and I'll be more than happy to help you. I will be uploading everything up onto the internet onto Facebook and the like as soon as I possibly can. So thanks very much, and I will, well, hasta la próxima. Bye.